There is something quietly fascinating about the private life of a queen. We imagine grand banquets, silver trays, and meals prepared by the finest chefs in the world. Yet behind palace doors, the daily habits of Queen Elizabeth II were often far simpler than expected. In fact, some of her favourite snacks were humble, almost ordinary, and at times even surprising. For example, she had a soft spot for small tea sandwiches with very simple fillings. She also enjoyed chocolate in a way that many people might not expect from someone of her position. And perhaps most surprising of all, one of her favourite treats was something many of us have eaten since childhood. These details may seem small, but they open a quiet window into a life lived under constant attention. What does a queen choose when no one is watching? What comforts remain when duty fills nearly every hour of the day? In this film, we will explore not just snacks, but moments of calm in a very structured life. We will uncover 15 gentle and sometimes unusual food habits that reveal a more human side of the monarch. Along the way, you may even find something that reminds you of your own memories. If you enjoy thoughtful stories like this, you might consider subscribing to the channel. And as we go on, feel free to share your own favourite simple treats in the comments. Sometimes the smallest comforts connect us all. Let us begin with something very delicate. The Queen was known to enjoy cucumber sandwiches during afternoon tea. This may not sound unusual, but the way they were prepared was quite precise. The bread had to be very fresh, the butter spread thinly, and the cucumber sliced almost paper thin. The crusts were always removed. But here is something curious. According to royal chefs, these sandwiches were not eaten in large amounts. Instead, they were taken slowly, one or two at a time, often while reading or speaking quietly with close companions. It was never rushed. Why such care for something so simple? Perhaps it was not about the food itself, but the feeling it created. A moment of peace in a life that rarely allowed it. Then there was her love for chocolate biscuit cake. This dessert became widely known after it was served at a royal wedding. Yet for the Queen, it was not a rare luxury. It was a familiar favourite. The cake was rich, made with dark chocolate and broken biscuits, pressed together and chilled. It was not overly sweet. In fact, it had a slightly firm texture, which made it easy to slice into small portions. Interestingly, it was said that if any cake remained, it would follow her from one residence to another. Nothing was wasted. This quiet habit tells us something important. Even in great wealth, there was a sense of care and restraint. Have you ever saved a favourite treat for later, not wanting the moment to end too quickly? As we continue, you might notice a pattern. Many of her favourite snacks were not grand or rare. They were simple, controlled and comforting. Take, for instance, her fondness for scones. These were often served warm, with jam and cream. But unlike the way many people enjoy them, the Queen preferred a very neat approach. Jam first, then cream, carefully placed. This detail may seem small, but it reflects a larger idea. Order mattered. Even in something as gentle as afternoon tea, there was structure. And yet, within that structure, there was enjoyment. At this point, you might be wondering what your own tea table would look like. If you have a favourite way of preparing scones or tea, feel free to share it. These traditions, passed quietly through generations, carry more meaning than we often realise. Now, let us turn to something a little more unexpected. The Queen had a known liking for marmalade sandwiches. Yes, something many associate with childhood. Orange marmalade, slightly bitter, spread thinly between slices of bread. But there was a story behind this choice. Marmalade has long been part of British tradition, often linked to breakfast tables across the country. By choosing it, the Queen was not just enjoying a flavour, she was connecting to a shared national habit. It is a subtle form of connection. a reminder that even the highest figure in the land shared common tastes with ordinary people. Does food sometimes remind you of your country, your family, or your early years? Another small but telling detail was her approach to portion size. According to royal insiders, the Queen rarely overindulged. Snacks were small, measured, and taken at regular times. This was not about strict rules alone. It was about balance. In a life filled with public duty, private discipline offered a sense of control. And then there was chocolate again, but not just any chocolate. She preferred dark chocolate, often with a high cocoa content. Milk chocolate was less favoured. This choice is interesting. Dark chocolate is less sweet, more intense. It suggests a taste that values depth over simplicity. What shapes our own preferences over time? Do we move towards stronger flavours as we grow older? As we move forward, the snacks become even more personal, even more revealing. Some were tied to tradition, while others were linked to memory and routine. And just when we think we understand her habits, another small surprise appears. As we continue, the picture becomes a little clearer, yet also more thoughtful. Behind each small snack, there seems to be a quiet story, a reason that goes beyond taste alone. One such example is the Queen's fondness for shortbread. This simple biscuit, made from butter, sugar and flour, has deep roots in Scotland. It is rich, yet plain in appearance. According to royal reports, it was often served during visits to Balmoral Castle, where the Queen spent many of her summers. At Balmoral, life followed a slower rhythm. The air was cooler, the days less formal. Shortbread, served with tea, became part of that gentle routine. Why would a monarch, surrounded by the finest desserts, return again and again to something so modest? Perhaps because it carried a sense of place, a memory of quiet hills, long walks, and time spent away from public eyes. And that brings us to another small but meaningful habit. The Queen was known to enjoy fresh fruit, especially strawberries, but only when they were in season in Britain. If strawberries were offered out of season, she would politely decline. This detail may seem minor, yet it reveals something deeper. There was a strong respect for natural timing. Food was not just about availability, but about quality and season. In a world where almost anything can be imported at any time, this choice feels almost old-fashioned. Do you still wait for certain fruits to come into season, or has that habit faded over time? Not long after, we come to something even more unexpected. The Queen had a quiet appreciation for simple biscuits, often served alongside tea. These were not always sweet or elaborate. Sometimes they were plain digestive biscuits, the kind found in many homes across the United Kingdom. There is something comforting about that image. A queen, seated with a cup of tea, enjoying the same biscuit that many others might have in their own kitchen. If you are enjoying these small discoveries, you might consider subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue sharing calm and meaningful stories like this. And if any of these foods remind you of your own past, feel free to leave a comment. These shared memories often carry warmth. Now let us shift slightly. Reports from royal chefs suggest that the Queen had a habit of taking afternoon tea at almost the exact same time each day, usually around 4 o'clock. With it came a selection of small snacks, always neatly arranged. Among them, there was often a slice of sponge cake. Light, soft, and not overly sweet, it provided just enough comfort without being heavy. But here is where it becomes interesting. The Queen was known to take very small portions, a thin slice, sometimes only a few bites. It was never about indulgence, it was about the moment itself. What matters more, the size of the treat or the peace it brings? As we move forward, another quiet favourite appears. The Queen enjoyed ginger cake. This is a warm, slightly spiced cake, often associated with traditional British baking. Its flavour is gentle but distinct, with a soft texture that feels comforting. Ginger, of course, has long been valued not only for taste, but also for its calming qualities. Perhaps this was part of its appeal. In a life filled with constant attention, even a small sense of calm could be valuable. Then there is something that may surprise many viewers. The Queen was known to enjoy a small serving of jam pennies. These are tiny sandwiches, cut into circles, filled simply with jam. They are often associated with children's tea parties, yet they were also served at royal tea. This detail has been mentioned by former royal chefs and even referenced in stories connected to Darren McGrady, who spoke about the Queen's consistent preferences. It raises an interesting thought. Why would such a powerful figure choose something so closely linked to childhood? Perhaps because some comforts never lose their value, no matter how much time passes. Have you ever returned to a food from your early years and felt that same quiet happiness? As the list continues, we begin to see a pattern not just of taste, but of discipline. The Queen avoided overly strong flavours during the day. Garlic, for example, was rarely included in meals or snacks. This was partly for practical reasons, especially during public duties, but it also shaped the kind of snacks she preferred. Gentle flavours, balanced choices, nothing overwhelming. This careful selection created a consistent rhythm throughout her day. And then there is one more detail that offers a deeper glimpse into her habits. The Queen was known to stop eating before feeling full. This was a lifelong practice. Snacks were never taken to excess. It suggests a quiet form of control, one that extended beyond food into many areas of life. Control, after all, may have been one of the few things she could truly claim as her own. As we approach the final part of this story, the snacks become less about taste and more about meaning. They begin to reflect memory, duty, and even the passage of time itself. And just when it seems there is nothing more to uncover, one final set of habits reveals something truly touching. As we enter the final part of this quiet journey, the meaning behind these simple snacks begins to deepen. What once seemed like small preferences now feels like a reflection of a lifetime shaped by duty, routine, and quiet personal choices. One of the more touching details comes from the Queen's evening habits. While her days were filled with structure, the evenings allowed for a softer rhythm. At times, she would take a very light snack, often something as simple as a piece of fruit or a small biscuit. It was never heavy, never excessive. This gentle ending to the day suggests a mind that valued calm closure. After hours of meetings, documents, and public roles, there was a need to return to something simple. Have you ever noticed how the final moments of your day often stay with you the longest? There is also a lesser-known detail about her fondness for honey. According to reports, the Queen sometimes enjoyed honey produced at her own estates. It would be served in small amounts, perhaps on bread or with tea. This is quite meaningful when we pause to think about it. The honey did not come from distant lands or rare sources. It came from places she knew well, places tied to her personal life. In a way, it brought a part of her surroundings directly to her table. Food, in this sense, became a quiet connection to land and memory. And then, there is something even more reflective. The Queen had a known habit of repeating meals and snacks over many years. Unlike many people who seek constant variety, she found comfort in familiarity. The same cakes, the same sandwiches, the same patterns. This may seem surprising in a world that often celebrates change. But for her, consistency may have been a form of peace. When so much of life is unpredictable, repeating small rituals can offer a sense of stability. Do you find comfort in having the same cup of tea each morning, or the same snack at a certain hour? Another detail shared by former staff speaks quietly but clearly. The Queen paid close attention to presentation. Even the simplest snack was arranged neatly. Nothing was careless. A small plate, a clean napkin, a proper setting. This was not about luxury, it was about respect, and respect for the food, for the moment, and perhaps even for herself. In a life where every action was observed, these small details remained consistent whether anyone was watching or not. And now we come to one of the most human aspects of all. Despite all the structure, all the discipline, there were moments of quiet enjoyment. A small piece of chocolate, a familiar cake, a simple sandwich. These were not grand events, they were pauses. And in those pauses we see something deeply relatable. Because no matter who we are, we all have small comforts that carry us through the day. According to those who worked closely within royal kitchens, including chefs who served for many years, these habits rarely changed. Even as decades passed, the Queen's preferences remained steady. This constancy is quite remarkable when we consider the span of her reign, beginning in 1952, a time when the world itself was very different. Through changing decades, shifting cultures, and countless global events, these small choices stayed the same. There is something quietly powerful in that. It reminds us that while history moves forward, personal habits often remain rooted in earlier times. And perhaps that is why these simple snacks matter more than they first appear. They are not just food, they are pieces of a life lived with care. As we reflect on these 15 gentle and sometimes surprising habits, a different image of Queen Elizabeth II begins to form. Not only as a monarch, but as a person who valued routine, balance, and quiet moments of comfort. There is no great mystery in a cucumber sandwich or a piece of shortbread. And yet, when seen through the lens of a long and extraordinary life, even these simple things begin to carry meaning. They remind us that behind titles and ceremonies, there is always a human story. A story made up not only of historic events, but of daily habits, small choices, and familiar tastes. As this story comes to a close, it leaves us with a gentle thought. Perhaps it is not the grand moments that define a life, but the quiet ones. The cup of tea taken at the same hour, the favourite snack enjoyed without hurry, the simple comfort that asks for nothing more than a moment of peace. And in that way, the habits of a queen may not be so different from our own. They speak softly and clearly of something we all understand: the need for calm, for routine, and for small steady joys that stay with us through the passing of time.